Hello everybody and welcome to another Doctor Who review. This time I'm reviewing a 12th Doctor story, Sleep No More. So, we're reviewing today episode 9 of series 9 of the revived series of Doctor Who, starring Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. I'll be brutally honest, I wasn't expecting much from this story because I didn't really get much of it like the first time round of watching it, and it's one of the few I haven't actually watched a lot. So it was interesting watching it again for this review to get my ideas and thoughts for it. As you know, with the new series stuff, I don't tend to go over a plot synopsis, so I'll go straight into the plot point of what's happened in the story. So, there are interesting elements here. The pre-title sequence with Reese Shear Smith's character of Rasmussen speaking to camera. The fact he sets up like this is from recorded footage across the ship sort of idea. I thought that was interesting. See how we work it. See how it comes together. It's the first instance of Doctor Who titles not showing up as the Doctor Who titles. It's kind of like a kind of Matrix type thing, and comes up with Doctor Who in the Matrix lettering that comes down at the beginning there. It's very much point of view shots all the way through. Every shot you see is from the point of view of somebody else that's in the cast, apart from the Doctor, and I'll get to that in a minute. It's a nice atmospheric build-up. They arrive on a space station. Doctor and Clara arrive on a space station. This rescue team has arrived at the same time. The rescue team is receiving a response call, an SOS call. Obviously, that's why they're there. The Doctor and Clara just turn up. They bump into each other while they're both exploring, and then the sleep monsters start coming about, what they call the Sandmen, and start scaring the bejesus out of everybody. It's interesting how the Doctor uses taste and smells to figure out the time and place. 30th century Indonesian Japanese fusion, circling around Neptune. Titan moon is nearby, but they're circling Neptune. There seems to be colonies on Neptune now in this century. Interesting. But the whole concept was that they've come to a research station where a machine called the Morpheus machine allows you to sleep a short period of time, 5 minutes, and you've basically refreshed yourself with a sleep cycle. There seems to be an after effect and a side effect of that, where the creatures that you come from the sleep that's in your eye when you wake up, they've all merged together and become sentient, brutal creatures. The Doctor is disparaging the idea of sleep. He feels it's important. He's worried about it. Clara gets sucked into one of the Morpheus machines when we find one, and then the camera shots change a little bit as well, which I think is interesting. The idea of sleep dust evolving into carnivorous life form, and that's what's killed the crew on the station around Neptune that they're orbiting, is quite a scary little jump horror, but it's very much a cutscene horror type thing, and I'm not a great fan of horror in general. But the concept and the sci-fi twist to it is actually quite interesting, and the best bits, I think, are the bits where the Doctor starts to click, saying, hang on a minute, there's lots of camera footage here we're finding, but there's no cameras. Where's all the footage coming from? And it's actually, the rescue crew think it's helmet cams, but at the times they don't have their helmets on, so how are they seeing it? There's only one of them who actually doesn't have any sort of point of view shots, and that's Chopra. And I'll go through the cast in a minute, because he never uses the Morpheus machine. And Clara only starts getting her point of view shots once she's been in the Morpheus machine. So it's an interesting little clever technique that's been used there for regards to the writing. Overall, though, the story is kind of, ooh, lovely, cutscenes, nice idea, and then stomping monster running around a base. They don't really stop the monster as such, they effectively destroy the space station, and this whole thing about Rasmussen is designed for the Morpheus machine and the problems with that. It's really your plot, and I can understand why it's seen as a weak plot. Visually it's fine, concept-wise it's a nice idea. It doesn't really get you, there's no really jump scares, it doesn't work in that respect. it is quite weak a script, so I can see why people don't like Sleep No More as a story in its own. We'll go on to the cast now, just very quickly, just go through this. We've got Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. He's full flow by this point. He's kind of starting to turn into the Doctor that you see in Series 10 by this point. This kind of well-rounded character you're seeing. He's got to that stage. The relationship between Clara and the Doctor is very much set at this point. The next story is Face of the Raven. So that shows, obviously, a lot more controversy around that in fandom, but that's the next story. So it's kind of like the culmination of Clara trying to be the Doctor and the Doctor trying to be the Doctor letting Clara be the Doctor to an extent, and you can see her thought processes are very Doctorish. Her trying to emulate the Doctor, it's more or less at its peak there, apart from obviously the next episode. Jenna Coleman, solid as always. No issue with her acting performance. Clara is a little bit higgledy-piggledy with the characterization. Clara can be, though. She's written to start with like that, and it doesn't seem to be really something that sticks. There is a backstory there now. There is a character that's developed. However, she's like a tool that can be changed and the kind of character that you want for the series. So she's effectively a new companion every time. It's a bit strange and weird, but with somebody who's Jenna Coleman's caliber, she pulls it off regardless, whatever it gets thrown at her. And her and Capaldi's chemistry is brilliant. His scattiness and his eccentricness that you see in Knock Knock and other reviews I've done for later stories, that scattiness is there. He's very heavily still using the sonic sunglasses at this point. They actually use quite well here because they use projectors for the video feeds, for people to see video feeds, which is an interesting little technique. But Capaldi, I don't know what it is with this Doctor, but he's hard to place at times. And it's nothing with what Capaldi's doing. It's just the Doctor's hard to place in regards to how he acts and how he reacts. And there are elements here that you see in later stories. I mean, the script he said when the bit when the Sandman first appears, and the Doctor says, "Hold my hand," and Clara says, "I'm okay," and the Doctor says, "I'm not." I love that kind of that reliance he has on Clara, and I think he does kind of feed and rely on her a little bit in regards to the way to make himself seem intelligent and feel wanted. And I think he's got that need there. It's interesting seeing it. It's interesting, the characterization, but it's hard to pin down. And I don't know what it is, but it's hard to pin down what that character is because it's changing at the moment. It's not like a cause to effect that you get with 11 or 10 or even 13. It's a bit more difficult to pin down at this point in his story, but either side, you can see you've got the grumpy, disjointed Doctor of the 8th series. You've got the all-round eccentric of the 10th series. This one, he's just about found his feet, but is actually still a bit aloof, but he's also very much the warm. It's strange to think. It's like he's in the end of adolescence. He's just found himself and just found who he is, but he's still not 100% sure. It's that sort of feeling, and it's difficult to get round. The rest of the guest cast, Reese Shearsmith is probably the one that stands out the most. He's Rasmussen. He doesn't come across as a threat. He comes across as a professor, a doctor, a scientist who's gone a bit too far and can't see the wood for the trees anymore. But he never comes across as somebody who is doing this really with malice. So the end scene where he disintegrates, because he was effectively a more advanced version of a Sandman creature, it doesn't have the impact it could do, because he never comes across as that sinister in the story. There's always something missing. You've got Elaine Town, who plays Nagata. Standard fare, trying to be commander, scared, but trying to be a commander. Neat Mohan plays Chopra. He's probably the best of the rounded guest characters outside of Reese Shearsmith's Rasmussen. He seems to be the one that sees sense about the situation a bit more. I also get a slight undertone that maybe he has something for 474, the Grunt. But it's okay. Some of these stories I can't fathom the characters that well. Chopra stands out because he seems to be different from the others. The others seem to be a bit more... that's the thing with 45 minutes. Sometimes you've got too many characters. Very difficult to get into knowing them and liking them. And this is certainly an example of that. 747 played by Bethany Black. I like the idea that you've got a grunt... the way the Doctor turns around and says low intelligence to the grunt's face at one point, literally to the grunt's face, is interesting. It's an interesting character. She saves Chopra at one point, but there's not really much there. Same with Deepando, played by Paul Courtney Hugh, I think it is, Hyu. Paul Courtney Hugh. He's playing kind of... it's like they're all part of a horror thing, which I never get. This thing, these characters that get scared and get killed off. I never get it. It's like Orphan 55 story. These characters I don't really get, and it's the same here. They're there as a function. They're there to try and drive along the plot, but the plot is just so simplified. It's difficult to explain. Speaking of writing, I mean, Mark Gatiss is hit and miss. I've done the Idiot's Lantern and reviews already, and I don't mind it because there's a couple of characters that are actually okay in it. There's other stories like the Crimson Horror I absolutely love. I love the Crimson Horror. I love the Unquiet Dead. But the stories like this, where you're going, what? Really? The concept, the idea is there, but if you get Mark Gatiss out of his Victorian writing stories that he does. Any stories he doesn't do within his specialism, which is the Victorian era. That's why The Unquiet Dead and The Crimson Horror work for me, because they are the strongest stories in regards to his writing style. When he tries to do a futuristic one or a sci-fi one, it falls flat. It's a nice idea trying to do this found footage type idea, but it doesn't gel. And I don't know what it is, and it makes me feel numb about the story, and that's always a worrying trait when I feel numb about a Doctor Who story. There's elements here that I always pick out and appreciate. The direction by Justin Molotnikov. Is it Molotnikov? Molotnikov? Yeah, Molotnikov. Justin Molotnikov. I'm trying to read it and all these names. It's the way it's directed, it's well shot, it's well prepared. Production-wise, it's fine. There's nothing. The thing that keeps it going is the actual direction more than the story. And yes, you got a lot of them in the classic series, but this one it is the only thing really that saves it all the way through, is the way direction works and the way the camera works throughout the story. One interesting camera shot was the one from Chopra's gun. Instead of actually his POV, because you can't get it from the Morpheus because he's not being the Morpheus machine, you get what was effectively a speck of dust or something on his gun as the camera shot in some bits just before he dies. That's interesting. Music-wise, there is no music. Murray Gold doesn't actually do anything here, and if he does, it's all atmospheric, and you don't notice his pomposity for his pops and tweets that he's used to tweaks that you have at this point. I don't know if it's tweets or tweaks. It's refreshing. The concept is interesting, but it just doesn't the story doesn't seem to be there to utilize it, and it's a strange one. And the music is suitable here because you don't need it. You need atmosphere, and it does help. But it's one of these stories I just can't put my finger on why it doesn't work, but it doesn't work, and it just meh. It's like listened to an extent. When I watched it last time, I think possibly I was mentally numb, so that people enjoy listening. I was a bit meh about it. But it's one of those stories, again, where I'm just going, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I see why it may be bad. I don't see why it's good. And as this middle ground of, I'm not sure. And it's difficult sometimes to do reviews when you have that sort of feeling for something, because you can't really describe much. And this is one of them. For that, I don't have a really high opinion of it. There's enough there to give it a score of sorts. It's not complete trash, but there's not enough there to make it a good story for me. in some respects, it's similar in rating to what I would say for a Time Lash. I appreciate Time Lash for some elements. Paul Darrow's brilliant, but I don't for others because of the way it's shot and the way it's directed. So in this way, this is one of these stories that's kind of like standard, staid. I can't put my finger or foot on what the problem is, but there is a problem, and I really can only give it as a very, well, maybe not generous, but probably genuine 2.5 TARDISes out of 5. Okay, let's see how that story stacks up with the rest of the Doctor Who reviews done so far. Sleep No More sits at 2.5 TARDISes out of 5 alongside Time Lash. And at the top is still 6 stories with 4.5 TARDISes out of 5, The Happiness Patrol, Inferno, The Day of the Doctor, The Case of Androzani, The Tomb of the Cybermen, and Dalek. That's it. Thanks guys for watching as always. Tell me what you think of Sleep No More, because I don't have much to say. As the length of the review and what I said in the review kind of states, sometimes these stories come up, they may become a bit more common because I've gone through some of the stuff I enjoy, and it is purely random how these come out. However, that doesn't mean that I won't have something interesting to say, and hopefully I have. But leave a comment down below, tell me what you think of Sleep No More. If you like this video, don't forget to like it and share it with the hashtag teamstructor. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you know when a new video comes out. General rule, every Sunday at 4 PM GMT is when a video comes out. Yes, and also if you want to help me out, support the channel, you can join our Patreon. For as little as $1 or £1 a month, you can join and help support the channel and help it grow. Go to patreon.com/Deanstructor. That's it for now. Next week we have a 6 facts on Sir Walter Scott. And then the following week we have Abbotsford House. So 2 exciting videos coming up. Well, at least I hope so. But until then, thanks guys for watching as always, and I'll see you later.